Hello, my name is Aviva, and today I wanted to share with you my favorite and least favorite book from each month from this year. So if you follow me on Instagram, then you might have seen in my stories over the past, whoever knows how long, about my monthly wrap-ups. I put on this little story of all of the books that I read this month. So I thought it would be fun to kind of bring it on here and then look at them together and see which was my favorite and least favorite from each month of this year. So I have them all in front of me. I am looking at my laptop right now, but I'm obviously going to share them on the screen. So let's make some room for my monthly wrap-ups, and we're just going to go ahead and start with January. So in January, I read all of these books, and right off the bat, I have a feeling that 10 Rules for Faking It is going to be my favorite from this month. I really enjoyed that. And then my least favorite is probably going to be Daughter of Smoke and Bone. I had DNF'd Daughter of Smoke and Bone. I forgot that I read that in January, but I didn't DNF it. I DNF'd it after book 1 because I absolutely hated it. It was like an insta love sort of thing, and I really wasn't a fan. I kind of wish that I even DNF'd it like halfway through the book, and I wasn't very good at DNFing back then. I'm still not very good at DNFing, so I never did that, but that was definitely my least favorite. And honestly, I'm looking between like The Real Deal and 10 Rules for Faking It, but I think 10 Rules for Faking It is definitely going to win there. So that was my favorite and least favorite from January. The rest of them were whatever. They were fine, but we're not going through all of them. We're just going through my favorite and least favorite. So let's continue. In February, I actually took like a 2-week vacation. That's why it says it there. But that was why I didn't read. When I go on vacation, I always bring books with me, and then I never end up actually touching them because I end up doing other things. So I really didn't read a lot from, the month of February. But basically, my favorite is definitely going to be A Court of Mist and Fury, because I basically only read the ACOTAR series in the month of February, and A Court of Mist and Fury is definitely my favorite from that entire series. And then my least favorite is going to be The X Talk, only because I was very disappointed by that book. It was supposed to be like an enemies to lovers, and it was like surrounded by this whole like podcast thing, and they were going to be pretending to be exes, and it sounded really good, but then it didn't pull through for me. I don't know. There was a lot about it that I wish there was more, and I just wasn't very impressed. So that's definitely going to be my least favorite from February. In March, I actually read a lot of books, and which one would be my favorite? You know what? I was doing my Throne of Glass reread, and now I have to pick one book from Throne of Glass. Can I choose all of them, like the entire Throne of Glass series as my favorite? I really shouldn't do that, but honestly, Heir of Fire, Assassin's Blade, and Queen of Shadows are my favorite from the Throne of Glass series, so those are definitely going to just be bundled up together as my favorite from the month of March. And then my least favorite is going to probably be Chain of Gold and Chain of Iron. I'm going to mush those together. And why they're my least favorite is because I was very disappointed by them. They're definitely my least favorite series from the entire Shadowhunter universe. I thought there was just so much wrong with those books. Like, we were following too many people. Even though I loved every character from it, we were just following too many, and therefore I couldn't focus on just one. And I thought that it was way too character driven for me, and then I wasn't a big fan of the actual problem that was going on. I wasn't a fan of it, and I don't know, there was just, I'm not getting too into it. But Chain of Gold, Chain of Iron, I'm mushing together as my least favorite, and Heir of Fire and Queen of Shadows and Assassin's Blade is my favorite. Come on, don't make me choose. Okay, let's move on to April. In April, I had finished the Throne of Glass series. Oh my God, and I read The Hating Game. The Hating Game was amazing. I also loved King of Scar and Rule of Wolves. I had a really good month going on here, but I'm gonna say that The Hating Game was my favorite from this month because I remember reading that and not being able to put it down. I was blown away by it. It was one of my first real enemies to lovers sort of books. I've read them before, but for some reason that solidified enemies to lovers as a trope in my head, and I was a huge fan. So The Hating Game is definitely going to be my number 1 from April. And then my least favorite, I'm debating between Simmer Down, which was an extreme disappointment for me, and then the Iron Face series, which was also an extreme disappointment for me. Choosing between the two. You know what? I'm going to go with Simmer Down because I thought it was way too cliche. At the end of the day, the Iron Face series, if I was in middle grade and I read this book, I feel I would have enjoyed it way more. I wouldn't have had as many problems with it. I can see why people like it, but I think I just read it at the wrong time in my life. But Simmer Down, I really didn't like. I thought it was like I said, way too cliche, but then also like, you know what? I'm just going to stay with that. I really didn't like that book. It was definitely my least favorite from April. In May, I don't know what I was doing in May, but I didn't read that many books. But my favorite is going to be the From Blood and Ash series. Honestly, because I binged the whole thing, I can't even think which one was my favorite. You know what? Scratch that. Kingdom of Flesh and Fire was my favorite. You know why? Because it reminded me a lot of A Court of Mist and Fury. I thought that it was extremely similar. Like those specific books from both series were so similar to me. And I have a feeling that when I do my reread, Kingdom of Flesh and Fire is going to be the one that sticks out the most to me. And then my least favorite from this month is going to be the entire Chloe Brown series. Do not make me choose. I'm not choosing which one was my least favorite because they were all horrible in my opinion. I know that people are a huge fan of this like series in general, like they rave about it. It's why I read it. I really didn't like it. I didn't like the writing style. I thought that there was nothing special about any of the romances, and it wasn't for me. If you enjoy it, like I'm not really like bashing on it. It just personally was not my taste and was definitely my least favorite books from May. Moving on to June. What did we read in June? Let's see. My favorite from June. I mean, you're making me choose between you're not making me choose. I'm making myself choose between the Come Back to Me series, The Spanish Love Deception, and All Roads Lead Here. So, I mean, ouch. I'm going to have to go with, I'm taking out All Roads Lead Here because even though it was my first Mariana Zapata book, I ended up liking the other ones that I read more than that one. So I'm pushing it to the side only because like The Spanish Love Deception and then like Come Back to Me, I don't even know which one to choose. Oh my gosh. Okay, well, I'm gonna go with The Spanish Love Deception. You know why? Because the cover is calling out to me for some reason, and we're just gonna go with it. But Come Back to Me series, like the first 3 books specifically, are literally amazing, and they are the biggest runner-up for this month. And then my least favorite, I was debating between Second First Impressions and then the Lost City series, like the Lost City, The Morning Flower, and then Ever After. The thing is I'm going back to what I said with the Iron Face series of if I read the Lost City series when I was younger, I think I would have enjoyed it a lot more, but I just read it at the wrong time in my life. So Second First Impressions was my least favorite. I should have DNF'd that book and I didn't. I kind of like skimmed my way through it, but I absolutely hated it. I was like a huge fan of Sally Thorne after we read like The Hating Game. After I read The Hating Game. And then everything that I read after her just never compared. And this Second First Impressions was very not enjoyable for me. I wasn't a fan of it at all. So we're going with that one. Now let's move on to July. So, oh my gosh, this was when I read my first sports romance of the year. So we actually read the entire Off-Campus series and we started the Briar U series. So let's see, was there anything else that was good enough? Oh my God, but Meet You in the Middle was amazing. The last thing you said was absolutely amazing. The Soulmate Equation was really good. I had a great reading month in July. This was an amazing, amazing month. I loved so many books this month, but I'm going to have to go with The Deal because it was the first sports romance book I ever read. It was also the first book from the Off-Campus series, and I loved it the most. Like out of the entire Off-Campus series and Briar U series, The Deal will always be my favorite from all 8 books. And it started me on a journey to like the romances that I read today. So I'm going to have to go with The Deal as my favorite. But then my least favorite, People We Meet on Vacation or Tools of Engagement or the Bromance Book Club. It's funny because as much good books that I read this month, I feel like I read a lot of books that I didn't like. And Tools of Engagement, People We Meet on Vacation. I really hated both of those books. The Bromance Book Club, I really didn't like either, but we're just going to put that on the side. I'm going to have to go with People We Meet on Vacation. And you want to know why? Because people hype it up so much, and therefore I was extra disappointed. I really didn't like it for multiple reasons. I'm not really going to get into it so much now, but all I'm going to say is that when people rave about the fact that like, People We Meet on Vacation was one of the best books of the year, I really just want to go and recommend them other books so that like, they could read something better than that, because there was a lot that I did not like about that book. And everybody has their own taste, but like, I was very upset that that book was hyped, and I've kind of given up on Emily Henry like after I read that book, only because I read Beach Read because it was so hyped up. I read it back in January and it was okay, but it wasn't like the best thing I ever read. And I'm like, okay, I feel like it's a little bit overhyped. And then People Meet on Vacation like solidified me that like I just don't think Emily Henry and me get along very well, you know? So I already chose my favorite and my least favorite, The Deal, and then People Meet on Vacation. Let's move on. August, I finished reading the Briar You series. I read the Ravenhood series in August. Best series. I'm currently thinking of all the books that like I read this year and like what's going to be my top ones. And this is definitely in my top 5, and I'm considering putting it at my top 1. So even though I did some rereads this month, I reread the Switch, Torn, and Ascend books, which are some of my favorite books of all time. I'm choosing Flock, Exodus, and The Finish Line as my top reads of August because like without a doubt, oh my God, every time I think about it, I get chills. Like Exodus, if I had to choose just one book, but really we're like bundling the series as my favorite from the month. Even though like The Wall of Winnipeg was amazing too. And again, all my rereads from this month was like great, but the Ravenhood series, okay? Just read it. I mean, it's not for everybody, but you should try it out. If you're liking the first book, then it would be amazing. Whatever. Anyway, my least favorite is going to have to be the DNF that I did, which was Tweet Cute. I only got halfway through that book. I really wasn't a fan. I will say though that if I did read it at a different time in my life, I might have enjoyed it more, but for some reason I really couldn't get into the book. So it was one of my only DNFs of the year. So I feel like I have to choose it. But just so you know, we're clear, I really hated Love at First also. So moving on to September, this is when I started getting like really into my dark romances. I kind of like read the Ravenhood series in August, and it kind of like put me on like, you know, the train of dark romances, whatever you want to call it. I don't know. But let's see. My favorite from this month, even though I read Percy Jackson this month and I loved it, I am going to have to go with the Sinner of Saints series. And that was Vicious, Ruckus, Scandalous, and Bane. And then if I had to choose just one from the series, I'd go with Scandalous. But seriously, I love the entire series. Like Vicious, Scandalous, and Bane are like my top from the series, and then like Ruckus falls right underneath them. But really, all 4 are amazing, and I love them. It's like a bully romance, an age gap romance, whatever. There's a lot of stuff going on in that series, and I'm just a huge fan. So that's going to be my favorite from the month. And then my least favorite is going to have to go to the Keaton Chronicles. I read it because my sister recommended it to me, and unfortunately, I absolutely hated it. So I read a ton of books in October, and I feel like it's a little bit hard to choose because, I mean, look at all of these amazing books. I read the entire Maid series in October, which I absolutely loved. It was my first mafia romance that I ever read, and like, I'll be forever grateful to that series for like, you know, introducing me to the little niche. But then also I read Culty, which is my favorite Mariana Zapata book that I've read, and like, that was amazing. And then also I started the Brutal like Birthright series this month by Sophie Lark. Like I read Brutal Prince, and that was amazing also. It was my second mafia romance. So like, oh, and we have Enemies. I mean, really, how am I supposed to choose? This one is a tough month. I mean, I read so many books this month, but also I read so many amazing books this month, you know? Maid series, Brutal Prince, Enemies. Okay, Enemies and Culty. Ooh, this is really hard. I mean, we're kind of trying to like, you know, differentiate between sports romances and then mafia romances, which is like, I have to choose which one I like more, and they're just so different. I mean, I'm having a really hard time here. Can I choose like all of them? I can't. So let's wean it out. Culty or Enemies, even though I absolutely loved both, I'm gonna have to go with Culty just because it's on another level. And then a Brutal Prince or the Maid series. I'm gonna go with the Maid series only like with a gut decision. Even though I read Brutal Prince and loved it, the Maid series just hit a little bit differently. And so now it's Culty or the Maid series, and I'm gonna go with the Maid series only because I feel like it was the start of my mafia, like, you know, journey or whatever you want to call it, the same way that I chose The Deal for the other month of like, it was my first sports romance. So I feel like I should just like go with my first, you know, mafia romance. So we're going with that. So, okay. Did I choose my least favorite yet? I don't think so. So, I mean, we have A Deadly Education. We have Love and Other Words. Those are the only 2 that, oh, and A Shadow in the Ember. I hated all 3 of them. Oh, and The Perfect First. I hated that one too. You know what? Even though I really wanted to DNF A Deadly Education, but I made it through all of book 1 and I really wasn't a fan. and I very highly want to choose it, I'm gonna go with Love in Other Words, because I really was very disappointed by that book because so many people said such amazing things about it. It's like so many people absolutely love that book. And then if you read it before, then you know like the catalyst of the story, there's a trigger warning in there for me that it ruined the whole book for me. Like I saw it coming once I was like 1/3 of the way through. Like you might have even seen my vlog for it. I vlogged reading this book and it was just a downhill spiral for me of like absolutely hating it. And I mean, I was just extremely disappointed by it. I was more disappointed by that than I was A Deadly Education. So I'm gonna have to go with Love in Other Words for my least favorite book from October. So that's really saying something considering how many books I read that month. And the last month we're going to go through is November, only because, it's currently December, so I don't have my wrap up yet. But for November, I read almost all of the Addicted/Calloway sister books, and without a doubt, they are going as my top favorite. If we really, really had to choose, I would say that Addicted After All was my favorite, but honestly, Addicted to You, Addicted for Now, Hot House Flower, and Addicted After All are like the top ones, with like Thrive being like my least favorite from it, and then like Kiss the Sky and then Ricochet. So that was extremely confusing, and I bet you didn't understand my weird which one was my favorite or least favorite. But basically, the Addicted series is without a doubt my favorite from this month. And then my least favorite book from this month is gonna have to be the one that I DNF'd, which was Give Me a Reason. I only made it 100 pages into that book. I absolutely hated the writing style. It was like way too textured for me. I bought that book on the biggest whim. I basically it was a funny story. I had this gift card to Target and it said that it was expiring in 4 days from now. And I freaked out. I'm like, it's a $15 gift card. I don't wanna waste it and I have nothing to buy. So let me just go get a book. But I had just done a book haul and I didn't really have anything that I particularly wanted. And then I was scrolling through Book Talk and I saw this book and it was paired with a bunch of other books that I really enjoyed. And I'm like, okay, let's just go for it. So I ordered it. And then after the fact, I realized that my gift card wasn't expiring in 4 days. It was expiring a year and 4 days. It said it was expiring in 2022, but it's 2021 now. And I didn't realize it. So I really didn't have to go and buy this book right now, but I did. And the thing is that I didn't even do any research on this book. I kind of just bought it on a whim. I saw one thing on Book Talk and I'm just I went for it. And then I was really, really disappointed. I don't know. I didn't like the writing style. And then what I did was I actually skipped to the back of the book. I'm like, am I going to be missing anything? And I have to have seen a huge spoiler for the book. And I'm like, I don't even want to see that play out. So I'm just getting rid of the book right now. So I did. But anyway, that is everything that I wanted to go through with you guys. So this was a lot of fun. I hope that you enjoyed watching this. I mean, I always feel it's fun to see, first every book that I read, but then also which was my favorite and least favorite from that month, because it's not comparing it to in general, all the books that I read, you got to break it down to just what I read that month specifically. So I thought it was interesting. Anyway, let me know if you liked watching this. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the books that I chose for my favorite and least favorite from each month. And also, if you like seeing these little wrap-ups, then make sure you're following me on Instagram, because I post them at the beginning of every month once I, wrapped up my month beforehand. So anyway, that's that. Also, if you're not subscribed, you should subscribe. You should give this video a like, and make sure to check back in tomorrow because a new video will be up. I am posting a video a day for the entire month of December. So yeah, anyway, that's that. And until tomorrow, enjoy reading.